Are you an insane? Following the success of the first season in 2012, a follow-up to the series was promptly announced. Fans only had to wait for 1 year as the second season, named Highschool DxD New, was aired on July 7, 2013. While the first season covered chapters 1 and 2 from the novel, Season 2 adapts chapters 3 and 4, presenting more relevant events from the DxD universe, within the arc named Birth of the Breast Dragon Emperor. If you're wondering what kind of weird-ass name is that, you will understand as you watch the show. Of course, if you intend to watch Season 2, you have to watch first Season 1. There aren't many flashbacks and no summary episodes are present on this season, so it is a straight continuation from Season 1. It feels more like watching one long anime rather than watching a different season unfold. And at this point, most people probably binge the entire thing, rendering this explanation pretty much pointless.
So what's with Highschool DxD New? Overall, it feels like the natural progression that the series should have had. DxD New adds new characters to the universe, explores the story a bit more, gives character development to the peerage, and the anime becomes more serious when it has to be. Kind of. We will further explain this quirk of the show when it's due, but the gist is Highschool DxD New made Issei's sex drive an intricate part of the story. Like in the previous video, we will talk about the anime story and characters, while evaluating other areas of the show, so expect major spoilers in this review. As for additional context, we suggest watching our video on the first season, because some aspects like animation or voice actors are pretty much the same in the sequel, and most of the discussion will go towards the new addition to the show, like the characters and story arcs. With all that cleared up, let's see if Highschool DxD New holds up to our expectations.
The anime made the expected improvements. Now that the studio has more experience than a previous season on their hands, you can appreciate more fluid animation and better design fights. There are still a few issues here and there, but the strong points remain the same. Good character design, overall good animation for both fanservice and fight scenes, and the soundtrack always delivers. Notable mention again to the voice actors, specifically to Yoshitsugu Matsuoka, returning once again as Exorcist Fried. His performance in the show is simply amazing, demonstrating an incredible voice range and good delivery on a very despicable character. Fried does awful crap on both seasons, but he's still a very charming and recognizable villain just for the voice acting alone. A very commendable feat performed by a very talented voice actor.
Spoilers for Season 1 and 2. No shit. As mentioned before, this story picks up right where we left off last season. Following the defeat of Riser and the keys between Rias and Issei, some changes were bound to happen, with Rias moving to Issei's house, allowing for more loot interactions between them. The seeds of conflict are planted no later than the first episode, once we start exploring Kiva's backstory and his hatred for the Holy Sword Excalibur. The first half of the season is dedicated to this plot point, expanding on the world previously established, and adding a few layers to the least developed faction from before, this being the Church. While this segment gives us some great Kiva development with a competent narrative, it falls a little flat when it comes to the antagonists, but we'll expand on this a little later. After our mandatory swimsuit episode, which serves as a nice relief from the previous arc, we move on to the second plotline of the season. The Leaders' Summit will bring the heads of the three main factions together to solve the problems between them, but this will be interrupted by an attack from the Chaos Brigade, the recurring big bads throughout the series. In terms of storytelling, Highschool DxD New does what the previous season did, only better. It keeps building the world that we were introduced to in Season 1, taking itself a little more seriously. There are some good story beats, along with an intriguing conclusion to the first arc, though the end of the second bloodline feels a bit sloppy, with the antagonist lacking a meaningful introduction, or legacy, if we're being honest.
The new season brought several new characters to the universe, while also giving personality to the one that was always there, lying in the darkness, alone and empty, Drake. As for the new ones, some of the most relevant ones are Zenobia, Irina, and Gasper, being the new addition to Issei's harem dream, well minus Gasper because... Let's begin with Zenobia and Irina as they are introduced simultaneously. Initially presented as antagonists or rivals, both characters present new dynamics to the cast. Zenobia, being the most confrontational of the pair, is a very decent addition to the party. She helps in the character development department. For example, she helps Kiba to realize his own weaknesses while humbling him a bit more. She also becomes Asia's friend, so she can have a companion based more on affinity, as Rias ends up being more like a big sister to Asia rather than a close friend. Of course, she also adds her own twist to the comedy segments. Being an overly serious girl with no idea on how the world outside of the church works, she spawns some hilarious scenes where we can see her inability to act as a functional human in society. While these traits can be kinda overkill or exaggerated, and they are, she still has some serious or emotional moments during this and the following seasons. And it makes sense once the background of a church faction is expanded a bit more, with discrimination and ostracizing being very common on the more religious faction of the series.
On the other hand, we got Irina, who doesn't bring much to the table yet. She fills the childhood friend trope of the harem, but her interactions are still not very impactful at this point. She has some important moments with Asia and Zenobia, but there isn't much more than that. This is in part due to her not being a member of the party at this point, taking a more active role in later seasons. So you can say that she was introduced on season 2 more than anything. We also get to hear Drake a little more frequently, now becoming an active character. Well, becoming a character in the first place, and not just a... Drake and Issei make a very good team, on both fighting scenes as well as your usual Highschool DxD shenanigans. We don't want to spoil these ones because you might get some good laughs out of these two. Finally, we got Gasper, becoming the almost mandatory trap character of animes post-2010. Being a shonen with no social skills or desire to leave his comfort zone, a literal box. He learns a lot from Issei on how to become a man, good model mate, and while it takes some time to warm up to Issei, they kinda become friends pretty quickly in the grand scheme of things. Although I liked their interactions because I found them genuinely heartwarming, it still feels a bit rushed. He has some cool moments in the later seasons, but for now he's serviceable. He also fuels several funny scenes, with his trap status and or his admiration for Issei being the catalyst for most of the more comedy-oriented scenes involving him.
While we believe that news is an overall improvement over the previous season of DxD, the antagonists of both arcs are quite a downgrade from their previous villains. Although Reinari and Riser weren't outstanding by any means, they serve their purpose for the narrative, while also having an impact on the following seasons. Let's explore them one by one. Galilei is the former lead researcher of the Holy Sword Project, being the main culprit for the suffering Kiba experienced during his childhood. He is cruel and sadistic man, and that's about it. He serves more as a plot device or a wiki read than a real villain, letting other, more slightly interesting characters do his dirty work. His other role is less than interesting, being that of an exposition machine, talking about the Holy Swords and realizing the death of God.
Kokaville arrives right along with Galilei, and it's even less interesting. If the ex-priest was a lore dump, the falling angel is a roadblock. His main purpose is to show the power gap between the party and the bigger antagonists of the universe, giving them a sort of goal to work towards. Even then, his lack of any real personality aside from wanting war leaves him feeling extremely bland. The cherry on top is the fact that his death was more useful to the plot than anything else he did, if only to showcase how strong Valley is. Speaking of Valley, while he is a pretty good antagonist, he's not really a villain, serving as the foil and rival for Issei's character. They get a really exciting fight at the end of the season, and he keeps being interesting in the following one. Kateria Leviathan is just... To put it bluntly, she doesn't bring anything to the table aside from introducing the old Satan faction of the Chaos Brigade and making Azazel cut off his arm. She lacks anything resembling a personality aside from pride and a desire for war. I'm starting to see a pattern here. Finally, we got Azazel. Kind of. We're introduced to him as the guy that calls Issei to work occasionally. A little suspicious, but they have some fun interactions together. His true identity is revealed in the second half of the season, Azazel, leader of the Fallen Angels. While he was built up as an antagonist, he really serves the role of the mentor of the party. A pretty nice twist.
In general terms, Highschool DxD New is an improvement over the first season, but the ratings are kinda similar. Regardless, here we go. Production value. It's pretty much the same, but a bit better. Animation is a lot more fluid, with issues every now and then, but again, no deal breakers. New characters have recognizable designs and good voice actors. I really like Riki Yakoyama, who voices Azazel on DxD, and Pt.2 on Fate Zero, but that's me being a fanboy probably. Again, 4 out of 5 as it's pretty similar to its previous season. Storytelling. We add more nuances to the story, characters and world building, which is good. The story takes itself more seriously when it needs to, while keeping the DxD charm of the story always present. Personally, I feel like the story got a bit messy near the end, with the inclusion of a new antagonist who appeared for like 10 minutes, just to prove the point that not everyone wants peace. Aside from that, the story unfolds nicely, with clear story arcs and good development in general terms. 4 out of 5 again, but now it's a solid 4. Characters. The old ones got more development and work, and the new ones fit nicely into the story. For the positives. The ambiguity of Azazel and Bali adds a nice touch to the character department. They fit the mentor and rival trope, respectively, but they do it nicely. It's cool to see Drake taking a more active role in the show, rather than just yelling or being awfully solemn. Shinobi is a plus to the show, developing the story and characters a bit more, not to mention the comedy value of her inclusion. Irene isn't developed very much in this season, so she's there, kinda, but she's super cute, so 10 out of 10. As for antagonists, I don't like them very much, honestly. The ones presented in season 1 were okay, but here, yeah, they are overpowered, but I don't have strong feelings for any of the new antagonists. Kokaville was important because he was one of the leaders of the Fallen Angels, and that's it. Galilei was an asshole, and he was relevant mainly because of his involvement with Kiba. Well, Fried is back, and Val is the rival. Well, honestly, it's a 4 out of 5 here. It's an overall improvement over the first season, but they took some steps back when it comes to the antagonists. Enjoyment. I enjoyed this season a bit more than the first one. Ecchi story and comedy have a good balance in the show, so the anime never gets stale. There's variety in the types of scenes presented, meaning that you will always be engaged, be it for the comedy, a cool fight, or mesmerized by the ecchi. There are a few minor issues, but nothing terrible honestly. 5 out of 5 here, Irina's best girl changed my mind.
There's honestly not much else to say in the grand scheme of things. DxD New is better. The animation is a bit more polished, the universe was expanded, and characters were developed. There are some issues, mainly when it comes to the antagonists, but it's an overall better product. With 2 seasons in the bag, Studio TNK has a clear idea on the direction the show should take, so we can only expect good things from now on. Right?